gosh, we feel for you. And we'll be back on the flip side. This is a great time to stretch your legs, do a few cartwheels, as my friend Brian Parsons says. So y'all just enjoy the news. And like I said, maybe we'll get something a little good right there.
Support for this NPR podcast and the following message come from Microsoft. Brian Arakpo and Michael Griffin were teammates in the NFL, and now they own a cupcake shop. The new light and fast Surface Pro 6 helps them on the field and in the shop. Get more power and more speed with the new Surface Pro 6.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Speer. At least 8 people have died in this week's snow and bitter cold weather that's hit the Midwest. Temperatures are still below zero in Minneapolis, Chicago, Milwaukee, and other cities, canceling thousands of flights and closing schools and businesses. NPR's David Shaper reports many cities are taking extra steps to help out their most vulnerable residents.
Here in Chicago, homeless people who will not go to a warming shelter may see the city bring a shelter to them in the form of CTA buses.
Those are mobile warming centers, and we will be moving around throughout the city so that homeless individuals who have not yet gone in hopefully will at least be willing to step on those buses and warm themselves up.
Chicago's Family and Support Services Commissioner Lisa Morrison-Butler.
There are folks that don't like to leave their belongings on the street, and so they want to stay close, and so the warming buses are something new and different that we're doing.
Similar outreach efforts are underway in other cities as a wind chill warning remains in effect through Thursday, and temperatures may stay below zero in some places until Friday. David Shaper, NPR News, Chicago.
The Trump administration's envoy on Venezuela says it's trying to find and freeze Venezuelan government assets around the world. As Michelle Kellerman reports, the U.S. is enlisting the help of the country's opposition leader, whom it recognizes as Venezuela's interim president.
The State Department's point person on Venezuela, Elliot Abrams, says the U.S. is looking at ways to ramp up humanitarian aid to a country that the U.S. says has been ravaged by a socialist regime.
The humanitarian corridor is something we are looking at, but of course it requires the cooperation of the regime. I don't know how practical that is. It hasn't been possible to date.
The U.S. has been trying to boost the prospects of interim President Juan Guaido. Abrams says he's trying to help Guaido's envoys find and seize Venezuelan government assets in order, he says, to pay for a humanitarian program. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
The Federal Reserve continues to say it will be patient in deciding any changes to interest rate policy going forward, a sign that after 4 rate hikes last year, Fed policymakers may be willing to take a breather. In its end-of-meeting statement today, the Fed said it's keeping the Fed funds rate, that's what member banks charge one another to borrow, at a range of between 2.25% and 2.5%. Chairman Jerome Powell says the Fed will remain vigilant, though.
The U.S. economy is in a good place, and we will continue to use our monetary policy tools to help keep it there.
The decision to hold interest rates steady on the part of the Fed was unanimous. Stronger than expected earnings from airplane builder Boeing and device maker Apple, coupled with the decision by the Fed to keep interest rates steady, sent Wall Street up sharply at day's end. The Dow gained 434 points to close at 25,014. The Nasdaq was up 154 points. The S&P 500 closed up 41 points today. You're listening to NPR. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell says he never considered overturning a controversial play during the NFC Championship game a week and a half ago. Goodell finally spoke publicly today about a botched call by officials that New Orleans Saints fans say denied their team a chance to play in this weekend's Super Bowl. More from NPR's Tom Goldman.
The commissioner finally spoke, but it won't make Saints fans much happier. At his pre-Super Bowl press conference, Roger Goodell said NFL rules don't give him the authority to order the Saints-LA Rams game replayed from the point when officials didn't call an obvious penalty against a Rams defender. Goodell said the penalty should have been called and added this.
We're going to make sure that we do everything possible to address the issues going forward and see if there are improvements that we can make through instant replay or anything else.
Goodell says historically there's been a lot of resistance to overturning no calls like the one in the Rams-Saints game. He says if the league fully evaluates possible changes and decides not to make any, he's comfortable with a status quo that's angered a lot of New Orleans fans. Tom Goldman, NPR News.
As the death toll continues to rise in the aftermath of a Brazilian dam collapse, an emergency spokesman there says says it's still not clear when search efforts will be called off. Authorities said they've now identified 51 of the 84 victims found so far, though last word more than 276 others were still missing. The dam that was holding back mine waste gave way nearly a week ago. Officials are investigating the collapse and say criminal charges could result. Crude oil futures prices moved higher today, oil up 1.7% to end the session at $54.23 a barrel in New York. I'm Jack Speer, NPR News in Washington.
Support for this NPR podcast and the following message come from Lexus, the first ever Lexus UX crossover, available in hybrid all-wheel drive, inspired by architecture and shaped by street corners. The city-smart Lexus UX, crafted to conquer the new frontier. Experience amazing.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour. And we are back. Thank you so much for being here listening to Paranormal Experience Radio. And I'm Kat Hobson, your host. And I am joined tonight by the most interesting person that I have talked to about cryptids in a while, as well as other stuff, because he's about everything unusual and a great researcher in almost all of it as far as I can tell. And that would be Alex Bob. So if you missed the first half, do not worry. You can go back. Our archives will be on iHeart, iTunes, Google Play, you name it. You can pick it up on Spreaker and go back and listen to that too. All you've got to do is go into any of those apps, search WBHM-DB, or just search Paranormal Experienced, and you'll find us. So it's worth it. If you missed that first half, you know you're going to have to go back. So, Alex, where are we going now? We were talking about the various cryptids, and, we have so much fun when we're chatting in between during the breaks. So, we cover a lot of ground there, too. What do you want to go to?
One thing I wanted to bring up about back on the cryptids, going into Ruffner Mountain, because you had mentioned that people go there to look for fairies. I thought it was cool. They had this sign there one day, and it said like, what lives in the mines or something like, or like, do you know what lives in the mines or something like that? And, so I started thinking, I'm like, well, what are they talking about? Like actual animals? Or are they talking about like Tommy knockers and like little people that are said to live in these mines and mess with miners? And then, we started investigating around the area there and actually found some interesting footprints and things like that. So I actually reached out to Ruffner Mountain and I asked them about any Bigfoot sightings in the area. And, they came back to me a couple of days later and they said that they hadn't actually heard of any Bigfoot sightings, but they had heard of bear and mountain lion sightings, which was pretty interesting to hear, because they're not supposed to be around this area. But when you get into cryptids and cryptozoology, mountain lions is a pretty big topic because they do say that they're not supposed to be there.
Right.
Cryptid means hidden, or it's not something that's not supposed to be there, that's supposed to be extinct, and then people find out that it's very well still there. So it brought me back to a memory where I was at Bass Cemetery, which is, back there behind Ruffner Mountain, and actually heard a similar, what sounded like a big cat scream.
And that's very distinctive.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually heard it back there near the cemetery. And like I said, I've seen one with my own eyes in Walker County. So I know they're still there, the mountain lions. With the bear, it could have been a bear, or it could, maybe someone did see a Bigfoot. Because what I've found in Alabama, there has been several stories of them actually being running on all fours, as well as being able to walk biped. So it's, recently one of the stories that someone told me was that up in North Alabama, someone had seen what appeared to be a white thing type creature which I'd like to go into that too, and the different ones that people see and everything.
Me too.
But someone had seen it and they thought it was a person because it was just walking bipedally, just like walking across like you or I would, and they like yelled at it. It didn't really pay any attention to the yell, so they shot up into the air, and all of a sudden it jumped down on all fours and just darted off and was gone.
Well, at least it ran away from them.
Yeah, exactly.
That could have gone south quick.
Yeah, because I'm not sure. Have you heard much about like the Dogman?
Yes.
Stories.
I'm familiar with Dogman.
When people talk about Dogman or even sometimes Bigfoot stories, some people are like genuinely afraid or think that these things want to hurt them or something like that.
Well, they communicate telepathically is the primary.
That's what a lot of people say.
And they send off warnings. Like, I've been told of a group, experienced researchers, right? Experienced fortune researchers who were standing by their trucks. They were all armed, and a dogman came up and was walking by, and one of them was reaching for his weapon and froze because it was basically a, do you really want to die now kind of message. Not one of them took a shot, not one of them lifted a weapon. And I know two of those men, and I trust both of them. And I also know that for them to be locked down like that, there was a good reason.
Yep.
So I do believe that they're dangerous.
Yeah, and one thing about them too, a lot of times with Dogman stories, you'll have, murder, cover-ups and mysteries that people talk about. You'll have stories about army people who have told about having to go kill these things.
Yes.
You have the different types of dogmen and the different, but usually, what I've found is that there's always some type of dark old magic or some type of thing like that going on with, because it's essentially what people would describe as like a werewolf, lycanthropy, and but then there's also stories about them coming from space as well. But like when you get into the white thing, the Alabama white thing specifically, because there are sightings of creatures similar and Bigfoots with white hair, in all different states. But the Alabama white thing has been blowing me away lately because of the difference in how they look. I've heard some people describe it as a Bigfoot with white hair. Some people describe it as like a big, almost like a lion type creature with bushy white hair. Others have said that it has like kangaroo legs and it has like a human or cat-like head and it's like 7 feet tall. This one man, and I forget which part of Alabama this was in, but they call it the slough thing there. I guess it lives down in the sloughs near the rivers, and but they said that his face, he described its face as looking similar to like a Joker's face. It has these big pronounced cheekbones and this big mouth, and said eyes the size of baseballs, and he said its hands were massive and that its fingernails were the size of silver dollars. And so you have all these different descriptions. So are people seeing the same thing or what? Because primarily it's up in northern Alabama, but we do have sightings. When you get down into Jefferson and even down near Montgomery, there's this one community where these people talk about the white things, and they say that they told me I could come down. There's a church there that they all go to. It's like a small town. Everyone knows each other, and there's elders at that church that have numerous stories about these things. And that's one thing I found when investigating the white thing, is when I go to these towns, there's elders and people who have been there, 90-year-old ladies who 100% believe in these things and have seen them and have experiences with them. Some people even tell stories about them coming right up to their house. And
wow.
So the White Thing stuff has been one of my favorites.